The wind howled softly across the empty valley. Dust swirled over the cracked, dry earth, carrying the faint scent of what had once lived here. Scattered across the ground were thousands of bones, old, brittle, and silent. Ezekiel stood at the edge of the valley, his heart racing as he looked down.
Lord, what is this place?
Ezekiel swallowed slowly and stepped forward cautiously. His sandals scraped against the stones as he entered the valley of dry bones. Every skull, every rib, every arm and leg seemed to tell a story of lives long gone. The valley stretched endlessly before him, a graveyard of 1,000 years. Bones lay scattered across the cracked ground like a broken puzzle, each piece silent, cold, and lifeless. Skulls stared at the sky with hollow eyes, ribs lay like fences in the sand, and arms and legs were jumbled in chaotic disarray. Dust blew across the valley, shifting over the ground as if carrying whispers of forgotten souls. Then, a voice, deep and powerful, filled the air around him.
"Son of man, can these bones live?" Ezekiel walked forward cautiously. His sandals scraped against the stones as he stepped deeper into the valley. Everywhere he looked, bones, skulls, ribs, arms, legs. They had clearly been there a long time. Ezekiel shook his head slightly, unsure how to answer.
Sovereign Lord, only you know.
"Prophesy to these bones. Speak to them." Ezekiel blinked in confusion. Speak to bones? But he had learned something about the voice of God. When God commanded something, it was never pointless. So Ezekiel stepped forward, standing in the middle of the valley. He took a deep breath. Then he spoke loudly.
Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord! I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life!
For a brief second, nothing happened. Then, rattle! Ezekiel froze. Another sound echoed across the valley. Clack, clack, rattle. The bones were moving. Ezekiel's eyes widened. All around him, bones began sliding across the ground. Arm bones scraped toward shoulder bones. Leg bones rolled across the dirt. Skulls turned and snapped onto spines.
Incredible.
The noise grew louder. Rattle, clack, snap. Skeletons were assembling everywhere. Ezekiel stepped back in shock as rib cages locked into place and spines straightened upright. Within moments, the valley was filled with complete skeletons, standing where scattered bones had once been, but they were still lifeless.
God's voice spoke again.
Ezekiel, prophesy to the breath. Call the wind.
Ezekiel lifted his hands. Suddenly, the wind returned, but this time it wasn't gentle. It roared through the valley like a storm. As the wind rushed over the skeletons, something incredible happened. Muscles began forming over the bones. Tendons stretched. Skin covered the bodies. Ezekiel stared in amazement as thousands of lifeless skeletons transformed into human bodies. But they were still lying still. Then the wind swept through them one more time. And suddenly, one chest rose. Then another. Then another. Gasp! A man inhaled sharply. Another sat up. Across the valley, thousands of people began breathing. They stood to their feet, an enormous army. Ezekiel looked around, overwhelmed. Moments ago, this valley had been nothing but dry bones. Now, it was filled with living people. God spoke again, his voice calm but powerful. The wind slowed again. The army stood silently across the valley. Ezekiel looked over the once dead valley, now filled with life. The sun began to set behind the hills, casting golden light across the valley. A once dead land now pulsed with life and hope. Only God could turn bones into an army. No matter how lifeless or hopeless a situation may seem, speak God's word over it with unwavering faith and watch a miracle unfold. What seems dead will come alive again. What was lost will be restored. Begin declaring powerful, faith-filled confessions, words of life and prophecy, and witness the impossible turn into reality. Hope rises, destiny awakens, and the Spirit of the Lord breathes new life into every dry place in your life.